But this wall, okay, so back to the wall. I had asked her to do it, and I thought she'd put it like, like this big. But she kept asking me, and I was like, just do it. Like, you have the vision, the artistic vision. I don't. And I came in and I was like, that is not what I was thinking. And I love it so much. I was like, I can't believe that I didn't think of it at that scale because.
So everyone who is tuning in, if you're watching this video from this month's edition of our new Inspozine, I have been chomping at the bit to introduce you to Erika. You saw her in the last newsletter that we released, and you saw her sitting in front of that very wall, which, guys, it gives me, I just goosebumps every time I see it. So that's my purpose statement. Your purpose is not what you do. It's what happens to others. Some of you heard me say happens in others when you do what you do. Erika, welcome. Tell us a little bit about who you are, who you used to be.
Who I was.
Yeah, who you were, your encounter with purpose, and what it's got you doing now.
No, absolutely. Yeah. So I am by trade a corporate meeting planner, have been one for 20 some odd years at this point. I'm the oldest of 4 kids. I was a student council leader. I was a newspaper editor in high school. And I just always felt like I was always told I was meant to do something great, which is kind of a weight to carry around. And it was like, I always had the word on the tip of my tongue, but I just had the feeling of like, I'm going to figure this out one day. Like, what am I going to do? But then you go on and you get a job and you get married and you have kids, and you suddenly realize not everyone out there is going to, find a cure for an incurable disease or become, the leader of a Fortune 500 company or start a movement. And I kind of just settled into it, but I always had that, like that tickle. I was like, what is it? So I went out and opened my own company in 2016 and was working remotely and had been for a long time at that point. A couple of years down the road, I started looking for office space. Couldn't really find what I wanted. But during that time, had a couple conversations where people asked me what my passion was, and I just blurted out female entrepreneurship, because during that season in my life, I wasn't finding what I wanted. So then we get to July of 2000, what year was that? 19. And I take a little jaunt to a little event called WEC in Toronto, Canada. And this lovely woman, Jade Simmons, is going to speak to us. And from the moment you started speaking, you had me, like you were talking to me. I tell everybody, I'm like, this is what she said to me from the stage, even though there were however many thousands of people there. But just something about your presence and the way you were speaking and, the passion in what you were talking about. I mean, I was dialed in. I was like taking notes. I have goosebumps even thinking about it. I could tell you what you were wearing. I could tell you about you were talking about wanting to take a trip to Africa, and you had mentioned it happened. I mean, like the whole thing is just embedded in my mind. And then you said this statement from the stage. I'm gonna cry. And my head literally exploded. Like, boom, I know what I need to do. Like all the puzzle pieces that have been floating around for 42 years in my life, just all of a sudden came together. And I realized that maybe I wasn't meant to do something great. Maybe I was meant to help others do something great.
Which by default is doing.
It becomes my purpose, right? So I realized my purpose was in helping others do what they do. When you said this. So while I may not be out there being the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, I can help a woman who is meant to do that, get to that role. And I really believe in the ripple effect. I believe in it. I hope that my legacy is kindness. I believe in the ripple effect of kindness. And applying that to a business perspective, it was the ripple effect of community and support. And I mean, listen, I'm a pretty good meeting planner and I enjoy it. And I've been doing it for a long time. But my purpose on this earth is to help female entrepreneurs make a difference in their lives and their local communities. And I didn't know it until I heard that. And then it all just, boop,
let me stop you there, because we hear that a lot, right? I didn't know
Yeah.
what that statement was going to do. I can't even tell you where the first place was that I said it. And then I don't know if I can remember when I decided I'm going to always say this.
Yeah, I'm going
But
to
I
use
think,
it. Yeah.
I think what happened was we got a reaction like that. We started getting these emails and inboxes.
Yeah.
I quit my job.
Yeah.
You said the purpose statement and I like jumped ship. And we were like, oh crap. Like people are taking this thing and running with it. And it, for a while I had to try to figure out what is it about the statement that's creating the reaction. And I think for the first time in listening to you talk, I'm starting to hear there's like a freedom, isn't there, in detaching purpose to individual greatness, first of all, or like I have to figure something out, or I have to discover purpose or uncover or find it. And I think for me, the beauty of it has been you've probably in many ways already been operating in it. Like I bet if we looked back through your life, Erika,
100%. I mean, all the way from Girl Scouts through student council, through my sorority in college, into my business world, 100%.
Yeah.
I just didn't realize you could make your purpose your business.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of example out there, or has not been. I feel like there's been a huge tidal wave shift in the last 2 to 3 years where women are doing that. And I think that's why we have more opportunity to celebrate it.
Yeah.
But also a lot of what we talk about is you have to be willing to champion and cheerlead what you're doing. And by doing that, you then are champion and cheerleading other folks by teaching them that they can do that. So I'm showing people this is what my purpose is. And then that turns into them turning around and saying, well, my purpose is this through my business. This is who I'm helping through my business.
Yeah.
And then in turn, that customer or client, then it allows them to do this with their purpose, right? So I'm trying to think of a couple examples, and it's so hard because there's so many, but by providing space for these women to run their businesses then can be professional. They don't have to put their home addresses, on the internet. And they're part of a community and a network that assists them. And then they take their business and they do with that business. They help, small businesses grow financially. Yeah. Like if they're an accounting firm, and then they're offering that support financially, which is then changing their customers' lives. And that, so it's just a continual ripple.
Back up a bit and tell us about OTT. Tell us.
Oh, yeah. So what is it?
We're talking because everybody knows because we know, but tell us about OTT, what it does.
So OTT actually launched as Girl Boss offices. We opened our doors in December of 2019 as a co-working space for 14 female entrepreneurs. I started it as a side project. I thought it will run itself. Thank goodness I didn't tattoo that on myself. It'll run itself. Then obviously 4 months later, the bottom dropped out of the entire world. Yeah. And I had just kind of, mortgaged my whole family on this new business. Yeah. While we were closed, it was very important to us to keep the community mission that we had opened with going. We are co-working space, but over and above that, and even more so, we're a community for female entrepreneurs. So we were checking in on people, making sure, I had 200 rolls of toilet paper. So if they couldn't find toilet paper, it was come in and make sure you've got toilet paper, hand sanitizer, or, whatever. Do you need food delivered? Are you okay with your, just keeping in touch with them. And then also realizing that we had a platform and nothing to sell on it because couldn't sell co-working.
Space, yeah.
So we used it to promote women in our Knoxville community who were pivoting, bless that word, pivoting their businesses and letting people know how they could continue to support and purchase from those women. So by the time we opened our doors back up, sure, we were still the co-working space, but we had been enmeshed in the community and we had seen what a difference we could make, even just during that short, kind of 2-month time frame where we had to have our doors closed. So OTT is now a company on a mission to change lives in local communities through female entrepreneurship. And we do that through co-working spaces. We've got 2 in Knoxville right now, and we're open for franchising all over the United States. And then in addition to that, starting in 2022, we'll be offering retreats for female entrepreneurs. We've got communities that folks can join, even if they're not a member. Here, we're offering programming, and then hopefully we'll be launching a podcast as well. So yeah, it's very exciting. It's a whole movement under
It is
the
such
umbrella
a
of
movement,
Ought. Yeah.
which, by the way, remember you said, well, maybe I'm not supposed to start a movement. And
Yeah, I know, but it kind of then
doing it.
every single day I have at least one goosebump moment, but definitely it happens more than that. And I'm not a crier, but I cry because seeing the success of these women in our office. I'm looking, a woman is walking out her door right now. She had a side gig when she started with us. And after about 3 months of being around a bunch of female entrepreneurs, she was like, I think I'm going to do this full time. Replaced her full-time income in less than a year and has hired an employee. We've got somebody else who sits way back there. She now has 2 full-time employees. And it's just watching their success stories, business-wise, but also personally, because the relationships they're forming, the support networks that they're forming. When one goes down with COVID, there are 25 women who are showing up with food, and these are not women who knew each other outside, until they met within our entrepreneurship community. Or if you've got a real hard call you're getting, going into, you're like, somebody please just
help me.
say a prayer with me, or just give me a kick in the rear end, or I'm going
let me vent.
I'm going to do a quick interview with Jade Simmons, who I'm like still a fangirl of. And they're like, you've got this,
So sweet.
So, but then there's also, I realize I'm just going, but even you, Jade, I think this is such a great story with you, because you didn't know me from anybody. I was just one of those people in that audience of your many audiences that year. But I took a chance and sent you a message and said, your statement has created this and I'm going to move forward with it. And you didn't just read it and say, oh, that's nice. You responded to me, and you have supported the work that we're doing. And I think that alone has leveled us up. The support that you've poured into us has just been awesome. Because I can tell that story, and then I can say,
well, listen, I lean into the things that I believe in, and for me to get up on a stage day after day, sometimes I see other speakers and they're kind of saying the same thing over and over, and they kind of don't know who they're talking to because it's just another gig. That was never going to work for me. And so it was important. In your room, it was a room full of, I call them experienced creators. So I felt like they were my kind, because our job involves us having to create a moment that transports people in some way, shape, or form, right? It could be one evening, it could be a coaching experience or a speaking or performance experience, but I felt like we were kindred spirits in that room. And so to hear from that room that there was someone who had grabbed that statement was very important to me. To know, and you say that you felt like I was talking to you. My prayer is always, Father God, let them feel like I came just for them. Because how important must we be for one person to come into a room full of thousands and speak just to our heart? And I always say, when people come up afterwards and say, I felt like you were here just for me, I go, then I must have been. And I sleep easy that night in the hotel, knowing that even one person takes something and runs with it. Because look at the ripple effect that you talked about. I want to back up a bit. You said something that I will admit I was a late bloomer understanding the value of, and that's community. I'm a loner. I'm a maverick, right? I love doing things by myself. But one thing that I always say is your purpose eventually will be too big for you. But it's never too big for the next you or for the team that I believe you'll be gifted with to help carry out your purpose. So you're seeing that in your own business. And as you're mentioning, the others who are now having staff members of their own. But you said there was a lady who was kind of doing on the side. But she was around all of you
Yep.
And something clicked. What do you think that is, that importance of community? What is that?
I think, and again, I really feel like, I mean, the timeline has lined up so perfectly with my personal timeline, and with the pandemic. But I think you just need to see the stories of who you could be, you know,
Oh,
like
that's good.
you need to see, yeah, you need to see that possibility. And I think I tell again everybody when I mention you, I'm like, and then she was on the presidential ballot in this many states, right? And I just feel like the cracks that you put in that ceiling are there for the next to put more cracks, or the next
Right,
to go through it, right? Outside of our two-party system. Like
right.
you were putting cracks there. So I think for her, she had a full-time job. She came in, like I said, kind of doing it as a side gig. But number one, there was somebody else in the office who also owned an account. She's an accountant, also owned an accounting firm. So she had a mentor she could go to and say, how does this work?
She didn't have to figure it out all by
I
herself,
didn't have to
reinvent
figure
the
it
wheel.
out. And she wasn't sitting at home thinking, maybe I should do this. She was sitting in our office, and I was walking in and handing her Judy Holler's book and saying, I'm going to need you to read this.
Yeah.
And then we're going to talk because you're not getting out of this, people pushing her, because I knew her, I knew her business. I knew where she stood in her business. And from the outside, I could see the possibility for her. If she was at her kitchen table, that would not have happened.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's seeing the possibility, seeing someone being your own possibility.
It's so huge. It's like I said, I think I wouldn't say I devalued, but I underestimated the power of community. And the way that I found it out was I created a coaching group program. And my focus was 99.9% on all this glorious content I was about to dish out to these ladies. Man, they were going to just get it. They were going to get their whole life in my year-long coursework with all the lives and the master classes and the blueprints. And I would be like, they're not even watching all the videos. And how come they didn't download all the PDFs? They were just loving connecting with each other. And it blew my mind because first of all, I'm like, I'm working way too hard because I'm not even digesting half the content that I'm up all night creating. But what was the most important thing was the community. And when we closed that group, I watched them, they're still connected. We're reopening again in a different form now. And the emphasis is on community. Because I learned that, the advertising, people say they want, help me 10x my business or help me do this. But really, like you said, it's like being in a room of people who, first of all, dare to dream as big as you, maybe even bigger. Because I always push you because I see like 100 years down the road. As you're talking, I'm like, okay, she needs to be on stages speaking this. This is a keynote.
Well, I mean, and that's I did my first speaking gig a couple months ago, and your response to it was, let me know if you want to do more.
Let me know, because we will put you down. We will
which
put
is,
your name
which is not anything that was ever on my radar, but I have 3 young kids. My daughter is, she's 12. And last year she called me out of nowhere. I was at work or something, and just, Mama, I just don't know what my purpose in life is.
Oh.
And I said to her, honey, I was 42 years old before I found mine. We've got plenty of time.
She's got time. And she probably is already operating in it in some way.
And she is, because she sees me in it. And I've got 2 sons. And for them to see a strong female kind of making their own way, I mean, people ask, what does your mom do? And they use the word entrepreneur. They say she's an entrepreneur and she helps other female entrepreneurs. So that's even just a separate ripple.
It's huge.
Effect.
It's huge. There are at least 25 other questions that I want to ask. I want to talk about your father, his influence. I want to talk about how you're balancing all of this. I want to talk about how purpose continues to show itself to you, but I'm not going to do it now because we have a special project coming in the future that I'm going to have Erika back for.
Cliffhanger.
Cliffhanger. We're going to go much deeper because I think purpose is something we can find earlier in life. And I do believe It is designed to be our dream job. And I also believe that may mean, it doesn't always mean you're going to be an entrepreneur, that you can have purpose in the work you're doing, even when you're working
Absolutely.
for others. So there's a lot to explore there, but let's end by uh, what advice would you give to people who feel like maybe they haven't found the thing they're supposed to do, or maybe they think they have, but they're a little afraid to kind of step out? What's that advice to kind of have the faith or the courage to move forward where purpose is
I
concerned?
think I'm going to give you two answers. I think the first thing is just to clear your mind, and then what word pops into your head.
Ooh,
I had quite literally never said out loud that my passion was female entrepreneurship until at dinner with Judy Holler. She said to me, "What's your passion?" And it literally just came out of my mouth. There was no thinking about it. I wasn't considering a list.
yeah.
It was just what came out of out of my mouth.
Wow.
And if what comes out of your mouth is knitting, great. Like if that's your passion, then that's what, so find that space where you can just answer that question, or what are you passionate about, or what gives you joy?
Yeah.
Like ask yourself that question in a quiet moment, or maybe with somebody. And then honestly, my biggest piece of advice is just do it. It doesn't mean you have to open an entirely new business and be running
Right before a pandemic.
right before the pandemic and be running two businesses and 3 kids and 2 dogs and a husband. But what can you do to bring yourself closer to whatever that was that came out of your mouth, whatever that purpose or passion or joy? If your answer is knitting, then do you maybe just want to teach the next door neighbor how to knit? And maybe that's where you start, but just do something that allows that thing space in your life.
Oh,
And it may be big or maybe small, but that's what I'd offer.
wow. That's good. It may end up in my book on purpose, and I'll give you the credit for it because it's good just to do that one thing that gives space. And don't you think that may be the problem is we don't have any space right now.
We have none. And I had no space for this, but you know what? The fact that I was we have a class here that I went through with our entrepreneur center to develop the business plan. And the fact that I magically was able to make that work for 9 Thursdays in a row, to me was God saying, okay, you can make this happen. And I don't know how we've added another 24 hours to every day or something right now with it. But if it's meant to happen, the space will happen for it. So.
Well, Erika, thank you so much. Those of you tuning in, I want you to know she's talking to us from her second space. This is her first space. And if you heard her kind of rattle it off like it was no big deal, they're talking franchising now. I think this is huge what you're doing. And people might say, well, there are already co-working spaces. Just because something else already exists doesn't mean there's not room for the way that you're going to do it.
Right. It's
so
not
while there are, everybody and their grandma seems to have a co-working space on every corner now, but none of them have felt like what you do, Erika. So kudos.
Just because it's the same name as something else doesn't mean it can't be different. It doesn't even have to be better. It's great if it is, but if it's different, if what you're offering is different, and there's a reason for it. And that's what we found. So
congratulations. I want you to know that I am inspired by you. I consider you now one of our purpose babies, as we're going to call it. Purpose babies who have taken that phrase amongst other inspiration and have launched something powerful that is going to serve others. And you now, lady, have stepped into legacy territory. Already that you're talking of it. No, I mean, this is the stuff you got to sit with. Like as the holidays come, this is the perfect time to really sit and digest what it is that because you're still moving. We talked about it before we were recording. Right? You're still in launch mode because you're at the second space, but really, this is the thing. We're like, we don't want to think about when we're not here anymore. But when you're not here anymore, there are literally women and women's children and businesses and future businesses that will exist
I know. Oh, it just, oh
Because
my
of the thing that you created. Can we
it
just
just makes me want to explode. I will close with one thing.
yeah.
Somebody asked today, have you started setting your goal? What is different about how you're going to goal set for 2022? That was the question. And up to this point, I feel like my goals have always been rather esoteric, or like I want to bring an idea to fruition. I want,
Okay.
whatever. And next year I'm looking at it and I've got it written down. My ideas have been brought to fruition. So now I have got hard, concrete goals, because it's not an idea anymore. And how excited, see, goosebumps again. How
Yeah.
exciting is that?
Yeah, the word on my heart for, I think it's for 2022. I stopped doing like resolutions and all that stuff
Yeah.
years ago, and then I would have a word. Then I pray, and a word will usually come to me. And the word that I keep hearing, phrase, is force multiply. And
Oh,
that's
that's
where you
good.
find that thing, right? That's going to give you leverage, and you have it now, right? It exists. You already know it works.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for the multiplication and the replication that's about to happen, and for all the impact that you are having on so many. So thank you so much,
Thank you.
Erika, for joining us today. And everybody listening in, stay tuned because you'll be hearing from her again soon in the near future. All right. Happy holidays.